Small. Wow, tiny.
You are currently listening to Tiny Table,
where we explore TTRPGs you might not have heard of.
Whether big or small, we hope to cover them all.
Because we know that great things can come in tiny packages.
Hello and welcome to Tiny Table, where no game is too small. From rules to rolling to review, we teach RPGs so you can play too. And today we have a very special guest. Please welcome Chris, the lead writer and owner of Hectic Electron Games, the creator of Raccoon Sky Pirates.
Hi!
Woo!
Yeah!
Hello, Chris. We're so excited to have you for our second ever interview. We're excited to be doing, hopefully, as many as we can of interviews with designers for the games we run going forward. We had an absolute blast playing Raccoon Sky Pirates, and we're really excited to delve into these questions.
It was so fun.
Oh, great. I'm so glad.
Before we get into, questions, any, opening bio stuff you want to tell us about yourself?
Well, I live in Columbus, Ohio. I'm a trans non-binary person, and I'm here to bring good vibes and good play experiences for everybody.
We love it.
Beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
You did it.
Yeah, and I'd say you definitely succeeded, because, I don't know, I had good times and good vibes playing Raccoon Sky Pirates, so mission accomplished as far as I'm concerned.
100%.
Awesome.
All right, let's get into our questions. The core genre image of raccoons piloting a rickety flying machine is immediately iconic. We had a blast with it. How did you first come up with this concept for a TRPG? What were your inspirations, both mechanically and thematically, and how did they motivate your design?
I'd been, playing tabletop role-playing games for a long time and had been really getting into the story games and had designed a hack book for a Pelgrane Press game and an adventure for Dungeon Crawl Classics. I'd done a few things, small things, but there was this night in October of the pandemic when a bunch of raccoons nearly got in the house. And I was too sleepy to see them, but the dogs woke us up in the middle of the night, ran to the door of the upstairs back deck, and were snuffling at the crack at the bottom. I didn't see what was on the other side of the glass, but my partner did, and she said that there was half a dozen raccoons on the upstairs back deck, picking up things and looking at them, putting them back down, pooping in the flower pots, and one of them scratching at the door trying to get inside. And so it just sounded to me like they had climbed down from some anchor chain, from some ship that was hovering above our house, and I had to make a game about it. Maybe because I didn't see it, I had to make a game about it.
I love it.
So when you say half a dozen, you mean literally at least 6 raccoons were roughly spotted?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And they just seemed like they were not quite organized, but, on the same team.
Working in tandem.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I mean, what an inspiration, honestly, At
the time, I was playing, and still am, with a local group that meets once a month, and half of them are designers and are coming up with new game ideas. And so I put together a 6-page version of this and played it with them, and that helped me start working on mechanics. At the time, I was really into the whole idea and ethos of a GM-less game. Mm-hmm. I really wanted to break myself out of the strictures, the traditions that come from Dungeons & Dragons, where the Dungeon Master has all this power and tells at least half the game, half the story for people. And I really wanted to break out of that. I really loved sort of ethically what a GM-less story game does. Distributing the storytelling responsibilities around the table. So I really wanted it to be GM-less, and then I really wanted to try to capture the chaos. So those things all informed it.
I love that. I feel that the that ethos of GM-less play, I operated as the facilitator for rules remembrance, but we all played a character in equal measure, and it really came through, especially in our second episode. I remember one of us introduced the bulldog character of Chunk Norris, and that character.
Isn't it just awful? Isn't that name just awful?
It's perfect.
Credit to Skylar for the perfectly awful name for a perfectly awful influencer family dog. But ownership of that role kind of just passed seamlessly, like, around the table, right? Like, one of us would give a voice to him, another of us would describe an action, and it would all kind of seamlessly flow back and forth. And we didn't even really realize how intuitively we were doing it until we finished the game. And then in the postmortem, we went, oh, in any other game, like, that would be an NPC, and only Julian would be allowed to, like, say what that character does.
Totally.
In another game that we recorded that was one of my personal favorites and one of our group's favorites, called Fiasco, it also operates on a GM-less style where everyone shares the narrative power equally amongst the table, and it sort of operates in a round-robin style. And that GM-less style is something I'm coming to realize more and more I personally get a lot of enjoyment out of, because it allows for such creative freedom on all participants' parts that can sometimes be lacking in other systems, and they oftentimes lead to such goofy moments because everyone gets to play off each other equally. The improv parts are all shared, and again, it leads for opportunities for people to come in and feel confident voicing an NPC where otherwise that would only be the role of one person.
Yeah, totally. And I really love that, and it fits with the kind of game that it is, because you want a lot of wild invention. You want everybody to be, stone souping the story together with things they contribute. And what I learned is that it works for some genres of story game and not for others. When I started working on what turned out to be, or is going to be, my next game, I realized that a game master is actually important there, necessary.
Yeah.
But for Raccoon Sky Pirates, it works really well. And it also means you have to have a lot of structure. That's where the 4 scenes came through, because you need a little bit of direction or some sort of guardrails to keep things on track, so that you build to a climactic scene and everybody feels like they've had a satisfying adventure. Like, adventure itself is a genre, and it needs to have an arc. And so you kind of need to bake that in. Slice of life stories, No Dice, No Masters works really great for slice of life stories. But as soon as you try to have some sort of story arc that builds and builds and builds and then resolves, you at least need some guardrails.
So this system has an approach to action that inverts the traditional approach for most role-playing games, where declaration of action precedes roles. How did you come to the approach system, and what iterations did it go through during development? And also, kind of hearing what you were saying about how you found some inspiration from deferring from 5e, and that's something that we heard with the last interview we went through, is it seems like D&D is this huge motivator for people to create games that are not like D&D and not like 5e. And I know that you said that you work with a lot of other creators. Do you find that is a common, motivator?
Well, there are people for whom trad games really click, and there are people for whom it's unsatisfying as far as guiding people toward making the kind of story they want to be told at the table. And I'm in the latter group, and most of my friends are. I'm not going to yuck anybody's yum. It's just that it doesn't feel satisfying for me or for most of my friends. And at the same time, it was my template, going back to the mid 80s. So it's like, it is pervasive, and it does inform all of our ideas about role-playing games. And I went back recently and looked at my very first draft of Raccoon Sky Pirates, where it was just a Google Doc getting ideas down, called Raccoon Pirate Game. And it was very much a conventional Powered by the Apocalypse type game. Only it was, you roll 1 die, but you have 4 stats, that were scurry, wild, cunning, and health, and you try to roll at or under your stat to succeed. So not strictly powered by the apocalypse, but very much in a story game mode where you have certain moves you can do, and everybody had the same moves. And so looking back at that, it was actually traditional story games, or traditional in quotes, but it was story games as I'd been playing them for a while that I wanted to break out of. And it turns out there are some things about D&D and about story games that I just wanted to break free of and try something kind of outre.
Before we continue on, I just have to say I love the idea of scurry as a stat. That is a great stat name.
There's a whole story game called Scurry. I have it, but I haven't played it. It's there are some things now looking back at this that I kind of want to incorporate into the next version of Raccoon Sky Pirates. But so I kind of got this idea, I don't really know where I got it from, that you would roll and then do your action. But it started pretty early in the Ashcan version that I did for my local gaming group, where at the time everybody had the same list of 12 actions. But it ended up being fun. You know, it's one of these things where you just write it up and try it and have a group that's really willing to try your weird ideas. And I'm very lucky to have a group like that. And then just see how it works. And it worked really well. And it really helped create this sense of chaos. Mm-hmm. And then once I had this whole idea of rolling first, these other people who were designers seized on it, thought it was really new. I was at the time getting some advice from Avery Alder, and she thought it was really interesting. But it ended up being a real pain in the butt because, I ended up wanting to give each different raccoon their own list of 12 actions, as we have in the existing game. And at first, I just left it up to the players of, you decide if this was helpful or not helpful, if this ratchets up the problems or not. And that just wasn't working. People need to be told whether it was helpful or not. So I remember talking to Avery Alder or emailing with her and being like, this is such a pain. Maybe I should just go back to you choose what you're going to do and then you roll to see if it's successful. And she was like, no, this is the whole game. The whole thing is this. Mm-hmm. So that's how I came up with approaches as sort of a desperation thing of okay, you pick the approach first and then you roll to see what you do. And if it's tagged with the approach that you picked, then it's helpful, and if it's not, it's unhelpful. And so I started building everything around the roll first.
So there was a version where you were rolling on a list of 12 actions, and you got the action, you knew what happened, but that was the end of rules resolution. And then it was up to the players to just adjudicate in this moment, do we think punch a hole in a wall is good, or is helpful or unhelpful?
Right, totally. And then it turns out that you need that tension of waiting to find out if it's helpful or not, having the game tell you, okay, things just got harder. Mm-hmm. And it's really interesting because at the time I was sort of radically into player agency, and that was really butting up in conflict with this mechanic that was not player agency. You're going to find out what you do. Mm-hmm. It turns out there's still a lot of player agency in how you narrate it, but the raccoon doesn't have a lot of agency. But I was really into player agency and really into you decide what's going to happen. And then it turns out that there is a useful role for restrictive rules, which I just find really interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to kind of speak on that, it's every action sort of feels like a little improv exercise because you are given the approach, or you choose your approach, you are given the specific action, and then based on your roll, you get a pass-fail state, and then it's kind of up to the player to squeeze in their creative influence while also having a strict set of guidelines and prompts. And I think those kind of limitations are what really breed creativity in players, because a lot of the solutions that I end up finding for my character, I probably wouldn't have found if it were just all up to me, or I could just do whatever I want. I'd probably just do first thought, best thought. Mm-hmm. But this system makes me consider a little more, which I find I appreciate.
And ironically, I found that the the prompting actually allowed me to cut loose a little more. Like it encouraged me to get more brazen with my description, like with a lack of prompting. And if I was operating with just like the scurry and cunning and health and the like, and I had nothing beyond that, like I would never have had the thought of like, okay, Rad's been making a lot of noise. Now 1,000 roaches pour into this room and get me out of a jam. Like my DM brain would have been like, that's a Deus Ex Machina, that's no good. And then, like, without prompting, I wouldn't have said that. But then when the game gives me that on this 1 in 12 chance, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the perfect time for 1,000 roaches to come to my aid.
Totally. Yeah. No, yeah, they do end up being a bunch of prompts that you kind of stitch together. And I find it works better for people who are into that kind of improv and folks who have a harder time making stuff up on the fly, might find the different prompts in conflict and have a hard time picking which one. I'm in the next version, I'm writing in more guidance for how you work with the prompts and figure out what to say if you're having trouble with it. But for people who love improv storytelling, which I think are people who self-select for story games, I think it can be really, it has turned out to be really fun. And maybe that's the divide. One of the great things about Dungeons and Dragons, right, is that you have all these tactical rules and you can get so focused on figuring out what they determine that you do that you forget to be self-conscious about your role-playing. Mm-hmm. And that's something I like about D&D. And trad games in general, but I'm a story gamer. Mm-hmm. I'm an improv person, yeah.
Yes. I think definitely a lot of us come from an acting background, and it definitely was nice for me. I think D&D made me a much better improver than acting school ever did, and it kind of gave me the training wheels to then, when we played Fiasco, when we then played this game, to feel like I could take those training wheels off and just make cool, fun decisions. Mm-hmm. And people will hear in our play that even, when we get started, it takes us a moment to get into the flow of it. But then I think as the story goes along, it helps you feel more confident and just make that decision.
Yeah, things
do the
are changing.
Story.
Right, just change it. Mm-hmm. Change what's going on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And actually, I'll take this time to kind of get us into our next question here, because one of the creative decisions that we made was that the Raccoons were going to do the whole Steal Christmas adventure. But what we didn't realize is that you'd actually made a Raccoons Save Christmas supplement. We were hoping you could tell us a little about this supplement, and if you have any further plans for expansions or other supplements for Raccoon Sky Pirates.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was Christmas of, I want to say 2020. Anyway, I had released Raccoon Sky Pirates. It was, it was a Kickstarter. It exceeded my expectations. And then there was this little community of really enthusiastic players. And one of them came up with an idea for, hey, what if they have to save Christmas like the Grinch or something, because Santa can't do it anymore. And so I wrote it up in kind of a manic haze where the Santa's sleigh crashes into the junkyard. He's knocked out cold. You put him up in this station wagon to recover, but in the meantime, somebody's got to save Christmas. And so there's this big bag full of presents, and they're trashed. But you've got these different things of Santa's, like his hat, his pipe, his reindeer chow, and each raccoon takes one of these things, and that gives you another list of 6 random actions that you can roll on, in addition to, choose between your 12 or these 6, and they are all Christmas themed. And in this one, you're assembling gifts out of junk in the junkyard that you're going to give to the people in this one house. So you're still breaking into the house, you're still trying not to wake anybody up, but you're leaving things there, things that they'll love, you're sure. And
my God.
And then you try to get out without waking them up. Yeah.
Wow.
That's awesome. That's
I love
fantastic. That's so funny.
And I have to say, working on Raccoon Sky Pirates itself was a manic fugue state, and I mean I'm bipolar, and it just sort of it was one of those things. Maybe it was because it was the first full game I'd released, soup to nuts, and the full game I'd made in a long time, where I just got so excited about it, and I'm usually very distractible, but I laser focused on this thing and just sort of piled all the Raccoon Chaos I could on it. And then the Raccoon Save Christmas was the same.
That's fantastic. We kind of just did the opposite.
I know, it was great.
Yeah.
I think it's why in the sequel the Santa trusts this particular junkyard. Like when the reindeers are going down, he's like, I know that junkyard has some real Christmas spirit in it. I'm sure they can help.
We have the huge tree.
It's true. It's like a beacon. It's basically a landing pad.
Yes.
Yeah, because in our story, one of the major motivators for specifically Neo's character in stealing Christmas was they wanted to steal enough lights and enough shiny things that Santa would finally visit the junkyard. And so the fact that there's this supplement, we kind of have a seamless segue into like our next home game of Raccoon Sky Pirates, because we've literally done the prequel to that, which is get Santa to visit the junkyard for the first time, where we now know he will inevitably crash.
That's so great. Yeah, I did release another one for Valentine's Day, which was Raccoons Are for Lovers, where in addition to everything else that's going on in a normal house raid, you're in love with one of the other raccoons or trash animals.
Oh my gosh.
And you're trying to let them know, and you're trying to get the perfect gift for them from the house. So that's been a lot of fun also. And I definitely want to make more of these as I can. I missed the window this year for Halloween, but I want to do Halloween next year. These are all up on my itch page and on my website, so I can give you those links later. But
yeah, please.
And since they're just PDFs, they're super and short. They're super cheap. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
It's amazing.
Incredible. Going on to our next question. Raccoon Sky Pirates is laser focused on having one precise story arc, which you'd mentioned is helpful in that kind of GM-less context. Your upcoming project, which is going to be crowdfunding pretty soon, Defy the Gods, serves as a more open engine for multiple adventures, and you've already mentioned that it's probably going to necessitate a GM. How has the design process differed for each approach? How did designing Raccoon Sky Pirates now inform your design on Defy the Gods?
I just say it was so gratifying making Raccoon Sky Pirates. It was so great to put some quirky little idea out into the world and have people respond to it so well. I think I got really lucky with the concept and the name. I like in trying to find the name, it's sort of like Snakes on a Plane. You just say exactly what it is and it's perfect. And I just got really lucky with that, and it was wonderful. And then it made me ambitious. So I was really into Powered by the Apocalypse games and other story games, and at the same time, I wanted to have the kind of fantasy adventure story where you could tell a long epic arc and explore different places, but with the kind of magic that Powered by the Apocalypse games have, where they point you in the direction of the genre that they're emulating. And so I think Raccoon Sky Pirates, mainly the way it influenced my ideas for Defy the Gods was by making me see that designing a whole game was even possible. And then I kind of moved on from quirky little laser focused idea that is about exactly one thing, one magical night where every raccoon's dreams come true. And I just springboarded to, I could make a much more ambitious game, which I bit off way more than I could chew. But it, in a way, it's like what they used to talk about on the Forge, my fantasy Heartbreaker, the game that, and Heartbreaker I think has come to mean two different things. I think originally it meant it breaks your heart to see it because they're just recreating D&D. But in my case it was, it breaks the designer's heart because they'll never get it done. Well, I've managed to actually write it, and but it was it's one of these things about the fantasy Heartbreaker was like, well, all these ideas you had all the time you were playing D&D or playing these other fantasy games, can you cram them all into one game? And that became Defy the Gods, where in Powered by the Apocalypse games like Night Witches or Monster Hearts, it is not trying to simulate reality or any abstraction of reality. It's trying to emulate a genre, and it is pointing each character at each other, at their relationships with each other, and at actions that will, by design, recreate the genre that you want them to. You can't play trash animals with Defy the Gods. And it benefits from a more serious tone. And it turned out to be a really weird peanut butter and chocolate mashup of doing a sword and sorcery adventure with story game mechanics. And I figured out pretty quickly that I wanted to do something that was as far away from Western European medieval fantasy as possible. I was saturated with Lord of the Rings and, of course, D&D already, and all this stuff, and there was so much in that was like, okay, well, even if you're doing your fantasy Faerun version of medieval France, weird ideas about religion and race are going to creep in there, and about class, both in the social sense and the mechanical sense. So that inspired me to go to something that was inspired by ancient Sumer and Babylon and that area of Mesopotamia at the dawn of writing, where there isn't all this imperialist, colonialist, Christian-centric, Eurocentric stuff sneaking in, because it's just not, it's before all that. And at the same time, I knew I wanted to make it about queer relationships. I think Thirsty Sword Lesbians had just come out, and it's just amazing. And while I was working on it, Apocalypse Keys came out with that monstrous success Roll Too High mechanic, and I loved that too. And I was actually getting a lot of advice from Ray Najati at the time, so that became a natural fit. Once I figured out that it needed a GM, which was again Avery Alder's advice, it started coming together, where you're winning people's hearts, you're tempting them, you're exploring this wild world that is mostly unknown, that the players build at the table, but that is informed by, I was inspired by Conan and Clash of the Titans, and then I rewatched Princess Mononoke, and I was like, Mononoke, and I was like, oh god, this is sword and sorcery. It's got magic, it's got gods, and it's just so much more lovely than the Conan movie. Or all this weird Orientalist shit that's in Clash of the Titans, the Sinbad movies. It's in Clash of the Titans too. But like, it just really helped break me free of these things I'd been carrying around and didn't really like, but was just felt stuck with. And so that helped the game really sort of click into focus.
I now have the image of Princess Mononoke climbing the Tower of the Elephant, and I'm completely enthralled.
That's it. That's the game.
Yeah, it's interesting hearing that, you are using a GM and some of the mechanical nature is more, somewhat traditionally inclined, if we're thinking of like, D&D as the quote-unquote tradition or whatever, but that the theming and the focuses are so different from what I find is often found in TRPG culture, or at least what I've personally been exposed to, because you instantly you mentioned Princess Mononoke, you mentioned Babylon. Already my head is teeming with ideas that I've just never really considered before. So I'm really already liking just the sound of that direction.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, I'm already kind of on the edge of my seat, like, okay, yeah, how can I crowdfund this? How can I make this happen? Because kind of behind the podcast, in our own home game that our beautiful Julian runs, we're touching on a lot of kind of these fantasy areas, these geographical areas that are often left out of traditional fantasy settings. And so it's very cool that there is kind of this push to bring them in.
Cool, thanks. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have to say, what I found was Powered by the Apocalypse and other similar story game engines already distribute a lot of the authority of the GM to the players. And so I just needed to lean into that a little bit more. There is a game master because this story needs to have a structure and it needs to like build to these climactic moments. But the players tell the GM what the world is like, what the pantheon of immortal gods is like, what the other forces in the world are like. They're told there are these forces, but they, through the magic of pick lists, which I think are just brilliant, they work out what it is and then hand that to the GM. And between adventures, including right at the beginning of the game, the players flip the script for a moment and play a small interlude scene where they are members of one of these world forces. Like they are the gods coming together, or they are the city authorities, or wild animals, and they play out a scene to answer a specific question. And then that signals to the GM where they want the story to go and what they want the conflict to be. So there's a lot of distribution of the storytelling authority to the players, and it gives the GM a lot to work with where they don't have to sweat over some storyline for days and days.
Mm-hmm.
So we're kind of coming to the end of part 1 of this interview, but don't worry, we'll have a part 2 on our Patreon for our micro tier members as our side table for January. But I wanted to ask you before we end this episode, do you have any advice for people looking to make their own systems, looking to make their own tabletop role-playing games?
Oh, wow. That's a great question.
Asking for a friend. The friend is
I really think it's good to start with something small. A beer and pretzels game, something with a very specific premise and a very specific set of mechanics, if you're making up your own mechanics, so that you can get it finished and you can play test it, so that you get a game done and learn about all the steps that come after you think it's done, and get it out there. And then a little more slowly than I did, build up to more and more complicated games. I think trying to design your own engine or mechanical core, lovely. It's great for anybody who feels like it would be fun. But there's also so much stuff out there that works because it has solved problems from earlier games. And so you can draw on that. It is impossible in the United States to copyright mechanics. So whether they have made a little engine name for themselves, like Forged in the Dark or Powered by the Apocalypse, you can swipe whatever. Just don't plagiarize their words. So, but yeah, start small, do something really modest but focused, and then you won't feel overwhelmed by everything. You can just really enjoy getting into the nitty-gritty of your specific game.
All right, well, Chris, thank you so much. That was great advice. And again, like I said, we'll be back on our Patreon for part 2 of this interview. But until then, bye, guys.
Bye. Goodbye. Bye, everyone. And thank you again, Chris. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. This is so fun.
Hi, and thank you for listening to our podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, then we'd really appreciate if you left us a review. If you really like what we do here and want to support us further, you can join us at patreon.com/tinytablepodcast. Our business email is also open for inquiries at tinytablebusiness@gmail.com, and all of our socials can be found in the episode description for any shenanigans you might want to follow. Till next time, see ya!